5, 4. All right, here we are, guys. Welcome back to the Church Debater and Preacher Mike. Mike, how you doing?
Man, I'm doing really well. Just needing sleep. That's all.
Needing sleep. Okay.
Yeah. We
Well,
had the family retreat yesterday, and so
right.
yeah, I slept in a cabin at Rolling Hills, but I didn't take all my stuff, so I couldn't take my contacts out, so that was bad. And then I didn't have water for my CPAP machine, so I didn't sleep hardly.
Oh no.
It's like 40 degrees in the cabin or less, maybe 35. It's terrible. So
So
I
if
didn't
I'm
sleep
trying
much, but
if
that's
I'm
okay.
trying to if I'm trying to trip you up today, then the odds are probably pretty good, aren't
Very
they?
good. Extremely
All
good.
right. Let me
You mean
word it this way. Go ahead. Go
you
ahead.
mean you don't try every week, trip me up?
I do. I
Most every
do.
time?
Yeah,
Yeah. Right.
I do. And people keep giving me ideas to trip you up with, so I'll see what I can do here. So I am going to ask you
Yeah.
a question, but I'm really going to ask it 3 times. I'm going to word it 3 different ways, and you can answer any of them you want, all of them at the same time, however you want to do it.
Oh,
The interesting part right now is our viewers already know what today's topic will be. So they know, because I'm going to include it in the title.
okay. All right.
So they know where I'm trying to lead you. So it will be interesting since they know to hear how you respond to this question. Okay,
Okay.
I'm
I'm
gonna
ready.
I'm gonna say it 3 different ways.
Right. All right.
What are Christians most skeptical of,
Okay.
or what are most Christians skeptical of,
Uh,
or what should Christians be skeptical of?
wow. That's pretty good. Your creativity is amazing.
Yeah, Well, that gives me something to do during the sermon.
That's it. That's it. Very good. All right. Huh. You know what? Let's do it this way.
Okay.
All right. I
And take
think,
your time. Take your
okay.
time. You don't feel like you have to rush through it.
No. Okay. All
All
right.
right.
All right. I would say that by and large, most Christians, if I were to run a survey, this is what I think the result would be. By and large, most Christians are most skeptical of their own salvation.
Okay.
Meaning, of course, if you walk up and ask the question, if you died right now, would you go to heaven? I think the thing you would hear the most might be, I hope so, rather than yes.
Yeah. And to give a definition, most people consider skepticism an attitude of doubt.
Yes, that's it. That's
Okay.
it.
All right.
And that's
All
what
right.
I
Keep
think.
going. All
All
right.
right. Now, but I think that probably then that answers two of them, most skeptical and the most Christians that are skeptical. But what should they be most skeptical of? And I would say, how about this? We all should be more and maybe most skeptical about the attitude that by my works, I can save myself.
Okay. Elaborate.
I think somehow or other we get it in our heads that if I do enough good stuff, then because of doing good things and doing right things and doing all the things right, that I will be saved, rather than admitting that all of our salvation will be based on the grace of God.
Right. Right.
So somehow or other, I think one of the greatest tragedies of Christendom is somehow conveying the message that our works piled up enough will get us into heaven, which you can't put away the works, but it's all because of the grace of God.
Right. Right.
So there we go.
All right. So I'm going to add some words to the sentence now.
Okay.
You answered all those questions from a Christianity standpoint.
Sure.
What, for lack of a better phrase, what worldly thing
Oh,
are most Christians skeptical of?
oh, a worldly thing
I don't,
that
I,
I I think I
even to the point of
Mhm.
if somebody brings it up that's thinking about coming to our church, it's hard for us to, even at that time, to keep from telling them that they're wrong. Even when we want them in our church, if we're not careful, we'll be so skeptical of one of their worldly beliefs that we say something to them automatically when we probably shouldn't have.
Well,
And then I'll tell you where I'm going.
yeah, it's fine. I, I would look at it the way that I'm hearing the question. I would look at it from two different directions. One's moral, and the other's doctrinal.
Okay.
And I think that now I'm talking about Christians in general, but when I answer it from my understanding, our understanding in churches of Christ, I think that most of us are skeptical that people could be here or come here and accept what we teach without causing trouble.
Yeah. In fact, they call that's most of the time the way the word skepticism is used today.
There you go. There you go. I think that's the case. And the other would be, I think, and it boils down to the same thing, but it comes from those two different standpoints. Morally speaking, I think that we are most skeptical that we're going to find people in the world that are going to introduce all kind of immoral concepts into the church that we just can't abide, and yet we think they're never going to change. They're going to bring it in. We're going to have any choice.
Oh, I got you. Okay. All right. Well, that has nothing to do with today's topic, but I'm glad we got it. All right. Here's what we're going to talk about today, and I'll give you a little background. We're going to talk about out of body experiences.
Ooh.
Okay. So I looked it up January 23rd, 2021, the weekend after my mother passed away. We had a pretty good episode. In fact, it's, if not the most watched episode, it's one of the most watched episodes about how I saw her, at times right before it happened, raising her hands like she was reaching out for somebody, walking in, and she was talking to someone, talking without, she didn't know we were in the room. She was just talking. And we talked a little bit about supernatural stuff. So I want to talk about out of body experiences because I eventually want you to ask, or I should say, answer, do Christians have the right to be skeptical? Is there scriptural proof that we should be skeptical of people that claim to have out of body experiences? I
Gotcha.
don't say that it's okay to be skeptical. I'm saying, do we have scriptural proof that no, that's not going to happen? And then before you answer that, let me give you some examples. First of all, the first book on this topic I ever bought was back in 1975, almost 50 years ago, called Life After Life. It was for a long time the most popular book on the topic. The guy wasn't religious. He never said he was an atheist, but he definitely, before he started researching it, did not believe in an afterlife. Okay. I'll give you some. Now, the reason I bring it up now, 50 years later, is that he just released a new book,
Oh,
50 years later, where he says the science community is not only accepting the fact because of all the research that they're not saying that the afterlife has religious overtones. They're just saying there's more and more evidence out there that it happened. Now, let me give you a couple of examples. There's all kind. In fact, I don't know who put a percentage on it, but there is a percentage out there that 17% of those who passed away now claim to have some type of that. I should say it like this: 17% who had near death experiences claim to have had some kind of out of body experiences. Really very similar. I mean, country to country, wherever you go, it's very much the same. I jotted down John 1 4 through 5 from class just because that's one of the many verses that mentions light and that God is light. A lot of these people claim to see a light. I see, even me, the way I'm wording it, it sounds like I'm skeptical. But I know where I used to work, and there is a surgeon. There is a surgeon that wrote a book.
Okay.
That didn't go to church, but he wrote a book about an out of body experience he himself had related to an aneurysm, where he saw himself over the bed watching the surgery, and then found himself in some kind of off-site place, wherever it was, saw all kinds of people that he knew, one person that he never met before, some lady. After he came back, rejoined his body, he claimed later he found out that the person in his, I'll just say dream for lack of a better word, was actually a sister that he never knew about. And in talking to his relatives about the story, well, they said, well, that was your sister's name. That person you met was your sister's name that you didn't know you had. So anyway, stories like that. There's stories that people, what one said that he saw a doctor drop a scalpel on the floor, and then of course asked for another scalpel, woke up, told the doctor that, and the doctor agreed he had in fact dropped a scalpel. And one comment that I thought was interesting, one quote was, together provable out of body, they call them OBEs, out of body experience stories can be enough to convince many of us being scientists, including the most skeptical of scientists, that there is something to the notion that the body may die, but the soul lives on. So even some of the scientists are starting to believe that. They just don't necessarily believe it in a religious sense. They just believe that, mind and body, I shouldn't say it that way, brain and mind are in fact two different things, and that the mind can continue after the brain has stopped functioning. And in effect, many of the scientists are now calling that your soul. Now, we've all heard the old joke where, if someone passes away, they weigh so many ounces less afterwards, whereas an animal wouldn't. And somebody tried to say, well, that was your soul leaving your body, stuff like that. I don't know that I'm pretty skeptical about that comment.
I'm skeptical on that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Having said all that, is there scriptural proof that we should be skeptical about these out of body experience stories, or could they have, in fact, have happened? I guess that's the best way to say it.
Yeah.
And while you're answering that, I'm going to look back through here and see if I made several notes, but I made them haphazardly on my phone. So I'll look back through and make sure I covered everything I wanted to. So go ahead. What's your comments on that so far?
I have a broad, sweeping, general comment to
Wow.
begin the whole thing.
Okay.
And that is, I have decided in my life that when I approach anybody who claims that they have seen, heard, or felt something, I have no desire, nor do I think I have any right to tell them that what they think they saw, heard, or felt is not real.
I've experienced that when I umpire ball games, but that's a different story.
You bet. I hear you. Well, I would love
You
to
didn't see
umpire.
that. Sure, I
I'd
saw
like to
that.
umpire ball games with hearing with plugs in my ears. But anyway,
Yeah, really. Yeah.
so I think that I have decided that I'm never going to challenge anybody and say, well, that just didn't happen. You've been misled, you're deceived, your mind is messed up. I'm just not going to do that. Now, in a more specific way, on the negative side, all that I know for certain that the Bible would be skeptical and teach against is using or practicing sorcery, witchcraft, and mediums in order to create that same concept.
Sure.
So I would never support anyone using any kind of sorcery or witchcraft to experience something that is on the other side or talk to someone on the other side. And so that's out for sure. Now, as far as the rest are concerned, I don't think it's possible. Now, what I would like to say is that the experiences that all these people have, as you said, are very universal, and I've read many of them. There's even a book called, I think it was 5 Minutes in Hell. A guy wrote about having gone there when he thought when he had died. And then there was that little boy that was famous and going on all the TV shows and
movie and everything. Movie was
yeah,
made about that
was
one.
it 23 minutes in heaven or something?
No, I can't remember. I should have looked it up. I'll see if I can find it while you're talking.
I think 23 minutes in heaven or something like that. And so he was just a kid, I don't know, 5 or 6 or something. And so his dad got him on all these TV shows. So I
His
don't.
dad was a preacher,
Oh,
by the
was he?
way.
Oh,
Yes.
I don't know that I remember that. But what I would say about all of them that I think is certainly true is that all of those cases do exactly what those scientists have said, pointing to a reality of life after death.
Right.
I do believe that it is impossible for us to know the exact time when the eternal part of us leaves the physical part of us.
Sure.
James chapter 2, verse 26 says that the body without the spirit is dead. Well, I don't know the exact moment when that happens. We basically say, I think in the medical community, they probably would say brainwave activity. When the brainwave activity cannot be measured, for that purpose, that person is brain dead. And therefore, that identifies actual death. Now,
Right.
obviously, in my opinion, that's not exactly true because at that moment, when they say a person is brain dead, they say, well, let's take them off of life support. Well, how long do people live without life support, without brain activity? I think that's not a solid number. It seems to me that I know of cases that last from a few seconds to maybe even many minutes, maybe an hour. I don't even know. But so brain activity can't be the definitive way of saying now the spirit has left the body. But I think it does represent a concept that is biblical, and that is that there is life after death.
Sure.
And all of these things signal that. Now,
And many scientists, at
yes,
least since 1975, have changed their mind on that.
yes, they have.
Yeah.
Because while you were talking about it, I had even heard about the measurements that are done when scientists were trying to show the difference between the electrical impulses of the brain and the fact that there is the mind that's outside of that. And there's been
Right.
research on that to say that those are not the same thing, which I would have to agree with, and that's
Sure.
based on scripture.
Right.
So, what I would say, in fact, is it would not at all surprise me that a person could, in times when the body, the mind are not functioning exactly fully life, if you will, we call it near death experience, they
Right.
call it.
In NDE is what the
Indeed.
scientific community calls it.
Okay. Then it wouldn't surprise me at all that they would. The consciousness outside of the brain would experience something on the
Right.
in the eternity. It didn't bother me, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Now, uh, what I also would hasten to say is that the people don't die based on James 1 in verse 26, I believe it is. Did I get that verse right? I know it's the last verse of James chapter 1 or chapter 2. Let's see. It is, yes, 26. So when the spirit leaves the body, that's called death. Well, Hebrews 9, verse 27 says that it's appointed to men to die one time. I don't believe that the Bible supports the idea that a person can die literally, biblically, twice. They die once. When the spirit leaves the body, I don't believe that the spirit can come back into the body to reanimate it, as in resurrecting.
Yeah. Would you be more comfortable in saying the body wasn't really fully dead
Yes.
if that in fact had happened?
Yes.
Because then that becomes more of a scientific community definition
Good. That's true.
of death, of death.
Mhm. And so what I would say is there must be this not only not fully investigated, but also maybe not fully able to be investigated time between what appears to be death, we call, as you said, NDE, near death experience, and actual death experience.
Right.
So I wonder then if in that interim time, whatever it is, if it's a few seconds, uh, it would make sense to me that in a spiritual state or in an eternity state,
I know what you're going to
what
say.
what would feel like a long period of time would actually
Right.
be a second or two.
Right. Right.
And so I would not have issue at all because eternity doesn't have time.
Right.
How does it feel? I don't know. I haven't been there yet. But for those who have had some kind of near death experience, there have been many stories of people hovering over their own surgery, if you
Yeah.
will,
Yeah.
and so whatever time it was experienced in this region of the spirit world would not be as long in the physical world.
Sure.
It just, but it seemed like, because our own dreams when we sleep take on the aura of longer time than we actually had been asleep.
Right. Right.
Um,
I agree with
so,
that.
so that's where I am on it. I would
Okay.
never try to tell someone that they didn't experience what they experienced.
Yeah. And I'm glad that's a good way to finish the discussion because that's really my whole point. Don't just be skeptical because you don't believe it.
Right.
That might be the difference between that person coming to join our church, opening up a conversation. You just never know. By the way, that movie was called Heaven is for Real.
Yes, that's it.
And I'll just read you the description here. It recounts the experience of young Colton Burpo, who had a near-death experience and claims to have seen heaven, Jesus, and many other experiences that the boy his age should not have known about, relating to, quote, he had said passed away, but near-death experience would be more correct. And again, just to emphasize again, because I've seen it happen when this discussion comes up in a church class environment, I'll see people roll their eyes, and I'm thinking, why are we rolling our eyes? This means something to this person. It's Aristotle is the first recorded person who claimed to have a near-death experience.
Did
So
not
that's a
know that.
long time ago. But
Wow.
don't just discount somebody's belief because it's not your belief in this regard.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that might be a foundational undergirding point of our entire time doing these videos
Yeah.
is a concept that is trying to reestablish or establish an approach with people that leaves discussion doors open rather than shuts
Yeah.
them down.
Good way of saying it.
And I want to have continual discussion. And I don't even mind continual discussion with people with whom I have disagreement.
Sure. Yeah.
But I want to keep going. I don't want to just shut it down. And yet I think that some people identify Christianity, the strength of their version of Christianity is that I can stand foursquare without listening to anybody and prove my point. I don't think that's the definition I want. So while I might not agree with what someone says, I want to hear them out and I want to understand. And then I want to compare to scripture and I want to hear them confront scripture. And I want to know, when you confront scripture, what does that do to your thought process? Just like I want to know what it does to mine. And in so doing, we can create an environment of discussion that may last for years. And that's good. I don't mind that a bit. So what you're doing in these things, I hope people appreciate and understand what we're trying to accomplish in that way.
No, Mike, I disagree, and I don't want to talk about it.
Okay,
As
then
long as
we'll
we
just shut it down.
yeah, as long as we don't come across that way,
There you go.
we're much better off. That was a pretty good, profound thought. Do you have a profound thought to close us out?
I tell you what, I want to recommend the profound thought we just had and let it stand.
All right, I agree. All right, guys, that is it for us, Church Debater and Preacher Mike. Say goodbye, Mike.
Goodbye, Mike.